and pounds or something from Germany. You can get super sacks in of carbon, of calcium hydroxide, calcium chloride, magnesium sulfate, magnesium. You can get all this stuff in its pure form, and then be very careful with dosing. We're going to try and stay here for now, though, because a lot of us aren't really. I mean, I'm just now getting to that level, and I'm over 20 years doing this. And the only reason I'm to that level is because we kind of just, you know, it just happened. I didn't plan it. So, all right, a little off track, not too bad. Definitely dose, no matter what size tank it is. You're not going to get it out of your salts. You're not going to get it. Not going to get everything. You're going to need to supplement somewhere along the line. All right, the bicarbonates and the carbonates. That's where it gets kind of confusing, because the whole conversion there is what gets tough. I'm just going to read this one too. Since bicarbonates are the salts of carbonic acid and essentially the naturally occurring pH buffering system to which corals use as their carbonate, we're now brought to alkalinity and pH. So, try and layman's it here. Bicarbonates, being the salts of the carbonic acid, these acids, pH, acidic, alkalinity, alkaline, are essentially the naturally occurring buffers that you experience in the wild. If we don't add these, it's not going to naturally occur in our system, and we're going to have to add alkalinity buffers and pH buffers. Okay, I thought you had something. All right, alkalinity, ocean water, 6 to 7. Home tank, 7 to 11, roughly. I try to stay 8 to 10. That's just preference. Everyone kind of has their own view on alkalinity, where you want to keep it. Some guys go 14, some stay at 7. 7's hard because you're putting pH buffers, which ultimately affect the alkalinity. All right, just to explain kind of what alkalinity is. It's a measure of how efficient your aquarium can buffer against the pH drop, against the acid drop. So alkalinity is really a measure that's going to dictate how your aquarium can hold up against the pH drop that ultimately every biological process is against. All these biological processes are dropping your pH. That's why we're constantly adding it. You know, because you got all these things going against you. So you've got to buffer it. I measure alk and DKH. Is that how everybody's doing? Yep. Are you doing milliequivalents? Everybody's pretty much doing DKH, degree of carbonate hardness, and the naturally occurring is around 6 to 7. Like I say, I like to keep between 8 and 10. Anybody preference? 14, 7.
I like to stay around 14.
About 14, so you're staying a little higher. You staying good though?
I'm starting to get some burn on my ankles.
Tips?
Yep.
Is it? So when your alk shot up, tips started burning? Yep. True. That's true. That's why the 14, that's like the threshold. I think 14 DKH would be the threshold. You don't even want to encroach on that, really.
Does a higher alkalinity help make the pH more stable or less stable?
More stable. Yeah. A higher alkalinity is gonna help the pH to stay more stable. But when you get that high, you start having, you know, what's your experience? Tips burning. I mean, I haven't seen it here in a while because we've been really cautious on alkalinity.
How do you lower alkalinity?
Water change.
Water change only?
Yeah. I don't know any buffering that will lower alkalinity. I mean, unless there's a raw form of something. Anybody know of anything that lowers alkalinity naturally besides water change? I didn't think so. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Some salts, and again, salts aren't consistent. They're going to have plus or minus factors. From bucket to bucket, from the top of the bucket to the bottom of the bucket is going to be not consistent.
Vinegar would be the best thing.
If you were, it wouldn't hold long though. Would it hold?
Well, it'll precipitate it out.
It
So it will keep it down. But I'd recommend doing a water change.
Yeah, water change. I think water change. In answer to that question, water change is going to probably be the best thing. And to touch on what you're asking, Tom, different salts are going to have lower and higher trace element levels. that are in all the salts have higher and lower trace element levels. You would have to really test it before it goes in the tank. Mix it, let it sit, get an accurate test on it, and see which salts. I mean, because they're all kind of different. You know, tropical moran tends to have a little higher. Like instant ocean tends to be a little lower. You know, you're gonna find infractions there where you got plus or minus factors. You know, all across the board with these trace elements that are in the buckets. But real quick too, while I'm talking about it, 5-gallon buckets of salt, they're great. You get a good deal on it, but the level you're gonna get different as you get further down in the bucket. So a lot of times, like a 5-gallon mix for a small tank owner, that's gonna be your best bet. Dump the whole thing in there because it's you know, packaged in that fashion. You know, really a 200-gallon mix designed to mix up 200 gallons, you know, and use it. So you'll get different levels from the top to the bottom of the bucket. And bags, you're pretty safe with bags. I mean, because they get kind of tossed around. The buckets settle though, as they ship, they settle because all the particles in the bucket, you'll notice they're different granular sizes. So you'll get natural sediment process. You know, I mean that's a pretty natural occurring process, even in the tank, like with the sands. See how the thicker ones are up here? It doesn't. I don't know. Just the way it settles out. So. Good point though. You can get it that way. I would say just water changes with your regular salt. Unless the salt you're using has a high alkalinity, test it. Really the only way you're going to know. How many salts are out there? 10, 12 different salts. You know, a couple different levels of different salts. Tropical moran makes 2. Instant ocean makes 2. I think Sea Chems makes 2 now. I don't use Sea Chem. You might use Sea Chem? Salt? Pretty much instant ocean users. Most everyone. Least expensive. Yep. You switched. How many of us switched to Tropical Moran Pro? Yeah, few of us are going to Pro. I'll tell you, if you don't want to buy a lot more of this, which I don't mind, buy all you want. You can buy the Tropical Moran Pro, and you'll notice your trace element levels they're going to stabilize better. Not going to be perfect. You're still going to need a supplement, but you're going to get a better stabilization across the board with the Pro. So just to hit on that. So we got the calcium. Yeah, man.
Can I add something about instant ocean?
Yes, please.
One of the things about instant ocean, when they designed that, it was meant to be mixed with tap water.
Yep.
If you were to take your tap water and measure the tap water,
Yep.
it's got about 100 parts per million of calcium in it, which is why when you go and you mix up your instant ocean and you measure the calcium, you'll measure it about 310 parts
Yep.
per million. Because they were counting on you getting that extra 100 parts per million.
Good point.
Mix it with the tap water. See, now we're using RO and DI water, so we take all the calcium out.
Yep.
So that's why when you use instant ocean, you end up with such a low calcium, and then you have to supplement to bring it up.
Excellent point. Good point though. True. It was designed to mix with tap, but all of us know shouldn't be using tap water at all. I mean, emergency situation, tap water.
I had heard, I don't know if it's true, that a lot of the salts out there are instant ocean. They just put their name on it. Is that true?
You know, I don't know what truth there is to that because they're not going to let on to it. It's rumor. It's definitely rumor. I don't know who's going to fess up. I know the big names, Tropical Moran, because they're independent. They're German. If they're overseas, you know, they're going to be. They're not going to be. I have heard rumor, Instant Ocean and Sea Chem. Don't know for sure, but it's just rumor. I don't know. Could be though. Alkalinity is the measure of buffer. pH is the measure of acid. We got that. Alkalinity and pH are pretty closely related.
Let's say you've got a tank that's lower on alk and calc than it should be. And let's say you're dosing 2 parts.
Okay.
How quickly should you bring that up to the correct parameters?
Alk and calcium from a low to a desired.
Right.
100 ppm a day. Probably 100. Maybe less per day. Because you know, everyone knows about swings. Salinity swing, temperature swing. You know, any kind of swing, any trace element swing or parameter swing is bad. A swing is wrap it up, wrap it down, vice versa. And what he's questioned, anybody didn't hear him, is how fast should we bring up a low trace element to the desired level on a daily basis, weekly basis, or from a standpoint of just being low. And I would